Welcome to Social Sessions. Today we have a special guest, Kevin McKay. Kevin is a renowned DJ, producer and founder of the influential label Glasgow Underground. Starting his career in the early 90s, Kevin quickly made a name for himself. He's known for his work on Milo's platinum-selling album Destroy Rock and Roll and for his label Glasgow Underground, which had been a cornerstone in house and techno music since 1997. The label has featured top artists like Camel Fat and Clapton. Kevin's ability to adapt to digital age, relaunching Glasgow's Underground in 2011, has kept the label relevant and at the forefront of electronic music. His focus on creating music that resonates on the dance floor and his collaborative approach to the production are key to enduring his success. So, welcome to Social Sessions. Today we're joined with Kevin McKay. How are you doing, Kevin?
I'm very well, Sean. Thanks for having me.
So, obviously, Kevin's kind of a big deal in the kind of Scottish dance scene and probably UK dance scene, to be honest. And we're going to kind of go through these kind of things. So I'll just go take you back to your own kind of upbringing and stuff. Where was it you were brought up, Kevin?
So I was born in Edinburgh, but then my dad quickly changed jobs and he was the minister at Bellahouse in St Stephen's, so the church right next to Ibrox. And so I went to school in the primary school there, which is now, it's no longer a primary school, it's a faith school now. And so I lived just over the other side of the motorway until I was about 7, and I moved to Paisley. And then my parents split up when I was about 14, so I moved to Fairley, which is a wee village next to Largs, and I finished my high school in Largs.
So was your upbringing, was it kind of normal, or did you have
It's a bit weird being the son of a minister, right? So, because you live in these manses, which are these big houses. So our house was in Dargarville Avenue in the south side of Glasgow, so it's like a big 2-storey sort of standalone mansion house, right? And all the people around were like people that own building firms, and they're all rich, but ministers get paid nothing. So like, my mum would be like, her setting for the heating was like 16 degrees. So only the heating comes on when it goes below 16 degrees. And then my dad would sometimes go mad at Christmas and spend like, I remember him spending 100 quid once on a double barreled ghetto blaster because I was really into music and stuff. And my mum like totally hit the roof, and we were on porridge for the next 6 months. And so, but then people at school think because of where you live. So even when I lived in Paisley, I lived in Castlehead, which is like a nice part of Paisley. So people they're like, oh, you're a snob. But you're not. So, but then you're surrounded with all these people. You know, so the guy down the road from me in Castlehead owned Ling's Distillery and stuff like that. So these are the people, and they're all hanging out with my mum and dad because they go to the church. But then, so you're kind of
mix.
It's this weird mix of like people think you've got money and you're a snob, but you don't, and so you're not at all. So yeah, it's a strange
paradox.
Yeah, it's a weird way to be brought up, and also, you know, faith in Scotland is just declined ever since I've been born. It's just gone down, and so people going to church was always like, you know, people didn't go to church even when I was like 6, 7, 8 at school and stuff. It wasn't normal for people to go to church.
I know.
So it was a weird upbringing.
It's because obviously religion is kind of dying a death a wee bit. I mean, they obviously still get people about the chapels that are struggling now, aren't they, and stuff. But it must have been weird in that way where you're people, because you would automatically just go, oh, look where he lives, he must be loaded, you know what I mean? And then you're going like, not at all, do you know what I mean? Like,
Mr. Hand-me-downs. Like my mum's knitting me jumpers and they're awful, and I'm getting pure like.
And did people at school think like you had like money and all that? Like,
I don't know, because like I didn't have an accent like I was from the scheme or something. So you talk a certain way because your parents talk to you a certain way. You know, my dad went to Cambridge Uni, went to Glasgow Uni, then Cambridge Uni, and he ended up being head of religious broadcasting for the BBC. And so when he was a minister, felt he was quite high up within that kind of minister thing. My mum was a teacher, and so they sort of bring you up not to, you know, you might say, oh, my wee brer when you're at school, but, you know, if you're at home, you have to say it's my wee brother. Or you talk a different way. So you don't, you're just apart. You're not like, you're apart from both. So if there's kind of like people that have got a bit of cash, and then people the sort of, if there's like an 80-20 split between kind of people that have got normal parents' normal jobs
Aye.
and then people that have got a bit of cash, then I was kind of neither of those two things.
It's quite unique, isn't it? It's a unique kind of way that it's like in the way that, like, because you're brought up with, as you say, like with people running about like a lot of money, and then so do you think that affected like the way you kind of, because obviously you've done really well for yourself, you've been successful. Do you think it gave you a kind of good work ethic?
Yeah, I think there's I mean, there's definitely, I know where that came from. So my parents were quite strict as well. So my dad, his dad was a minister. His dad had fought in the war, and his dad was really strict on him, and it was the 70s, so it was like really strict parenting. You know, only when it was I think the first year I went to secondary school was they'd banned the belt. So this kind of idea that, you know, fear's the number one motivator. Mm-hmm. And my dad was like pretty terrifying, even though he was a minister. So as I got older, I'd be like, hang on a minute, you're up there saying turn the other cheek on a Sunday, yet you're punching me in the face when I'm 15 minutes late for something. Like, so that, but you start to then question that and go, what, like, and have these issues with your, like, you realise later, well, I realise now after having some therapy that I had quite a dysfunctional family, but at the time it was just how it was. You think other people get the same kind of treatment. Like, you don't think you are in some way different. That's that's what I realise now. That is, when you're grown up, that's what you think of as a kid. But anyway, whatever the way he was, he seemed to only show his love when I did really well at school. So I had to, if I didn't do things perfectly, then I wouldn't get any kind of, I'd get nothing from him. So that was the kind of main motivator. One, I didn't want to have a sore face. And two, I wanted my dad to love me. And so I had to do really well at school. And so that certainly was a big motivator for me. But I know now that's not healthy. But I think that's what drove me on. The other thing that drove me on was my parents, because they grew up in the sort of shadow of the war. They were born during the war, the Second World War years. So they had this whole, you've got to finish everything on your plate. There's starving children in Africa. And even though you can be a smart arse and go, I name one, but there was still, you can't, that's how it was. And so they ended up overfeeding me. So I was like, at one stage I was 14 years old, 5'8", 14 and a half stone. I'm 14 and a half stone now and I'm 6'4". I was massive. I had a 40-inch waist. I had to go to special shops to get my school trousers. So that kind of weird upbringing plus wearing glasses, I've now got contact lenses in because I've got but I'm not bothered about wearing glasses now. But back then, so I was fat and I was specky and I was the son of a minister. That was weird. So I was like, I had a perfect storm for bullying, for attracting bullies.
I can imagine. I can imagine, and obviously, it's these things shape you. And as we spoke about, we touched on it a bit earlier. Trauma is a big thing these days, and we know more about it. And there are people out there that kind of talk about. It's like I always try and say to people even when I'm talking to, like, just because your family, like, it's as if people don't want to say anything about their parents. Like. And it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means the generation that they were brought up is a different generation, and you kind of learn for that. And I'm pretty sure when I grow up, my son will say to me, "You made mistakes with me down the line somewhere," or the media or agenda, whatever that is going on at the time, will tell you that you've done something wrong. Do you know what I mean? But so did you kind of get a wee bit bullied at school and stuff? Was that? Oh yeah, terrible. Was it?
It's only when I moved to Largs, I got to that stage where I was so overweight. And I realised I had to take control of it for myself. So I came up with a solution where I said to my parents that I was going vegetarian on sort of animal rights grounds. And they were like, well, we're not cooking separate food for you. You can do that, but you can do it yourself. So I was like, okay, that's fine. And it just meant that instead of having these like enormous portions that I had to force down, I could just, if I just wanted to have a sandwich for my dinner, I could just have a sandwich and it was fine. I could have a cheese sandwich. And so like over that summer before I moved to Largs, I grew. So I was like 5'11" by the time I started fourth year, and I'd lost like 2 stone. Brilliant. So I was like, I went from being bullied in Paisley, and Castlehead's rough as well. You got like, do you know the school?
I know. Like when it's a rough Paisley.
So it's got half the kids from Fergusley Park. So the ones that don't go to John Nielsen went there, And so, yeah, it was tough. You know, even back then in the 70s, there was kids carrying knives in school, which was, if you talk to a lot of people that grew up, I think, who grew up in schools in the 70s, that wasn't common.
No. I mean, like, yeah, like Glasgow and you had bits of Paisley and they were really, really bad. And
yeah.
So it's quite, it is a very unique background you've had, isn't it? In the way, like, you've had, like, seen people like Fergus Part and stuff like that, and then you're moving. So was it moving to Largs, and obviously did that give you a kind of new lease of life?
Yeah, so I was able to start with a clean slate, and I didn't go into school, and I could sort of work out, I had to then work out how to stand up for myself. But, you know, I sort of went the wrong way, and I sort of stood up against people that were kind of connected, like kids that were maybe younger than me, but had bigger brothers that were maybe...
gangs and all that.
There was a bit of that. So, and also, I remember this kid when one of my first days in Largs, because I guess I was taller than everyone else at the time, and so this kid comes up to me and he has this flick knife, and it's literally like 5 inches long. And I'd seen kids in Paisley with like Bowie knives and proper, and I was like,
"What's this?"
I was like, "It's not even going to get through my clothes, mate. Like, beat it." But I embarrassed him in front of his mates, and that was he was the bane of my life for like the next like 3 years of school, just because I'd
stood up to him.
But I'd also embarrassed him.
I know.
So then he's like, "Right, well, I'm going to get my mates to batter you," and then so there's like a guy 3 years older than me going, you know, yeah, if he says jump, you say how high, otherwise I'm gonna.
It's tough, isn't it? Like, I mean, you look back in your day, you look at school, and you just like, and you do learn that way where if you fight back and you win, and then like you kind of go, right, that's the way to deal with that. As a kid, and that was kind of the way that people dealt with things back then. It was like if you were, people used to tell you to stand up for yourself, and obviously I went to prison and. It was like that's when my bubble got burst. I seen like real guys who were like much worse than me, and I was like, wow, it's a big scary world out there.
Yeah.
And I think when you come through like these wee bits and stuff, you, like especially towns and stuff, like, but then you just become part of that kind of environment. It's your environment that kind of makes you. So you've learned to stick up for yourself, and on that you've probably. What did your parents think about that when you were kind of getting into trouble then? Like, were they...
Oh, my mum was... but I chose to live with my mum because my dad there'd been too many instances where I was too scared of my dad, basically. And I didn't... So I chose to live with my mum, and she thought she'd handled it quite well, but my dad was really distant as well. He wasn't there, so I didn't have any of that kind of rough and tumble play that kids have with their dads, and that kind of, I had no idea what was like an acceptable level of standing up for yourself, what could be considered like a bit of like horsing around, just like good, you know, no one's having a go here, and then what's the line, where's the line? I had no concept of the line, so people would sort of like take the mick out of me, and I'd just be straight up, like I'd go from 0 to 100 because my dad was like that. He would have a super short fuse, and so I would react to things like that when I saw something. I knew somebody was having a go, so I would just like, and then you realise that like you're going to get the mick taken out of you for that as well. So that's not an ideal. So it's kind of really, I don't know. It was hard to learn how to be a man without any kind of guidance from like an older man.
I think it's amazing, and obviously like I've had the pleasure of meeting your son, and he's a lovely boy, and so it's testament to yourself, Kevin, in the way that you've done things. Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of people, this is what takes them into like addiction and maybe get gangs and stuff. Like that's very easy to do. Do you know what I mean? Because when you're not getting validated at home, if you certain people validate you, and you can maybe get attracted to the people that are not getting validated at home as well. You attract together sometimes, and that's what causes.
I think the fear that I experienced growing up was so great that I couldn't get into fighting. I couldn't, like, I remember once having I think I've only ever been in one fight where I threw a punch. And I'm quite a big guy, and I didn't realise what happens if you actually put your weight into a punch, and the guy spit half a tooth back out at me. And that actually was horrible. I was like, and so it was almost like I remember having a couple of fights at secondary school, and I just ended up like just fudging it, like going down, letting the guy kick me for a bit, and everyone laughing, and I couldn't do it. And then it was only later when I was like I started having, I had Lewis quite late, so
Aye.
my son was born when I was 42.
Aye.
And so but it's only then when you see the sort of the behaviour you learned as a child,
Aye.
you sort of start to repeat that, but you can see immediately then that it's not healthy.
I know what you mean.
Even though you've experienced it all your life and you didn't see it was not healthy because it was happening to you,
Aye.
you immediately go, I'm doing that thing that my dad did, and I really don't like that I'm doing that. So I started therapy at that point, and it took me. So I've still speak to a therapist every couple of weeks, and it's just to go through like and uncover that trauma that happened to me and try and, because it wouldn't come out most of the time. I don't like. I'm kind of trying to live a very peaceful life, but there would be some places where it came out, like on the football pitch.
Aye.
I would have a short fuse.
Aye.
And so it'd be like, right, how do I get this out?
Aye.
And it was one session where I got into a situation with one of like in a work situation, and it was if me and this guy had issues, and I was just transferring all that kind of anger I had towards my dad onto this guy because he was acting in a similar way to my dad did. I remember having this one session, and I was like, the reason I can't like get into a proper thing with him is because I actually feel like I'm so angry I could.
Aye, you could do hurt somebody. Aye.
And it's only once you go through that and then go, right, okay, and then once you get past all that anger in your session and you like what's left, you're actually really sad about what happened.
But
and
it's definitely it's when you're processing that trauma, it's sore. And that's why a lot of people choose addiction and choose because it's no easy to go through it. It's
not
reliving it and experience it and then learning how to live with that feeling because it doesn't go away. Like the feeling, you just need to learn, and that's what you're learning is a set of tools. And it's amazing because just even meeting you, talking to you, like before the point, you would never know, like you know what I mean. So it's again that like it just shows you go back. It just shows to go that nobody knows anybody's like that kind of what's happening in homes and stuff. Like you come from that kind of minister's background, you would think right, he's like that he's religious, like that way. And it's just never judge a book into it. No, it's such a true saying.
And I'm not saying, it was only when I started because the way I was brought up, I became a perfectionist.
Aye.
So, and I didn't realize that was unhealthy. I thought that was like one of my superpowers.
Aye.
That I was like, no, everything gets perfect. But see, I'm sure people that have worked with me or worked from any time in my 30s or in my 20s, I know those people that have worked with me, and I've said things that are not cool because in my eyes what they did wasn't perfect.
Aye.
And obviously now I know no one's perfect and mistakes happen, but my dad was such a way that if a mistake happened, he would go through the roof.
Aye.
And so I just had this idea everything had to be perfect. And it was only once you sort of break that and realize that that's unhealthy. I thought that was, well, if everything's perfect, that's great. How can there be any problem with perfectionism? And it's only when you go, well, that's the problem because you can't tolerate mistakes and mistakes will happen.
No, you seem as if you've got a great level of awareness. I think that's what's going in your favour. I think like you've got a level of awareness that not a lot of people have, and you're able to break stuff down in your own head, and that's unfortunately a lot of people don't have that. And that's what I try and push that quite a lot about raising people's kind of vibration level, just to learn like some of the stuff that you're doing is no your fault. It's coming through whatever you've experienced maybe in childhood. So important, and I think people are only starting to realise the amount of stuff that how important that is in going through. And obviously some of the stuff you've done, and we'll go on to speak about that later, and you've done some amazing things in music stuff, and that's probably come down to your perfectionist stuff. Where
it definitely is, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So can I take you into the kind of music scene and obviously, so how did you get, so were you always a kind of fan of like dance music?
Well, it's weird because my parents had no music in the house, and if you speak to my mum, she'd be like, I don't like music. She's one of the few people on the planet that is like actively, anything there's music on, she's like, turn
like
it off.
Encanto, have you seen Encanto?
I've not seen Encanto.
It's no Encanto, it's I can't remember. It's one of the Disney films.
Right. Sorry, excuse me. And yeah, so she was like, and when I first started making music, she's like, oh no, turn that off. I can't listen to that. And I would be like, hang on a minute, Mum, I'm trying to like show you something I was doing. But anyway, that's my mum. She's like her own special person. And my dad didn't think anything made after 1942, so he would only listen to classical music.
Aye.
But as I got as a teenager, it became a huge escape for me because I was having this, I didn't enjoy school. I'd come home and I'd be terrified of my dad. And so the only thing I have was like a record player in my room, and I got pocket money and I could make extra pocket money washing the car and stuff like that. So I did that. And then I'd go down and buy singles. I'd be buying Talking Heads and Adamant and whatever I could get my hands on when I was 13, 14, listening to Steve Wright in the afternoon and just, I would turn all the lights off, proper teenage stuff, turn all the lights off, put the music on loud and just like lose yourself in it. But it was a real escape for me. And it just became that. It was like my happy place, my safe space. I could go, like, I lived for a year with my dad when I was 16 or 15, going into 16, and I couldn't hack it. I couldn't handle like having family dinners with them, and so, but I wasn't old enough to live on my own, so I just would, I'd be in there. Fleetwood Mac, Tango in the Night, had just come out, 1987. So I was like, that was my jam. And I would just have that on, or Prince, Sign of the Times. And those records got me through that year where I didn't have to deal with, like, I just didn't have to deal with my dad.
Oh, because some of your remixes are amazing, like kind of older stuff. So that kind of makes sense and how why you've went to like. Cause I was listening to some of the remixes and that, like, when obviously we were talking, I was like, well, I've heard like that's the one that gets played in the pub, like the club mix of that and all that. Do you know what I mean? It's mad. So where did the dance music come in? Was it the rave scene or was it?
I started off. So I was. When I was 6, I'd lived with my mum and then I lived with my dad for a year, and then I was meant to go back and live with my mum, and she decided that she was going to move out of Scotland. So I was on my own. So she had this house. She moved in with her then boyfriend that soon became her husband, but she had this house in Fairley, and she let me stay there and gave me like a budget to pay the bills and stuff. She gave me like 30 quid a week. So this is me just turned 17, living on my own. And I was working in Nardini's and trying to make enough money, and I was trying to fit in as well. So I was trying to fit in with the kind of people. It's like you said, so you fall in with people that are like that offer me a bit of protection within that kind of community where there's people that there's some people that want to like
people get you.
Yeah, people that want to get me, and then so I'm hanging out with people, and I'm kind of, I always felt as a kid I was like. I'd have a bag of sweeties and be like, not this is like an analogy, but like I'd have a bag of sweeties right here, be my friend, have some of my sweeties, because I didn't feel
a wee bit.
Total people pleasing, didn't feel value as myself, and so I would be like the guy bringing the music tapes and like this, like making tapes up. So I had a little Citronic mixer that I got from Tandy, and I'd worked out how to mix from the CD player into my record player, and I would just make up tapes, tape off the radio, and then start, do that. It's just mix tapes, and then if we'd go for a drive in the car with a bunch of mates doing stuff we shouldn't have been doing, and that would be on in the background, and that was kind of. And then when I went to uni in Glasgow, I stayed round the corner from the sub club, and the guy next door from me, in the room next door from me rather, he was from Bromley and he'd been clubbing in London, and he was like, "Oh, the sub club's like meant to be the best and like one of the best in the UK." So we went, went round there, and I just kind of. Before I'd just listened to music that was on the radio or stuff that you'd find from the radio, Largs had a Woolworths, that's where you got your music. It wasn't like in any way underground, but there was still dance music in the charts, so I was kind of gravitating towards that. And then when I went to Sub Club, I was like, I said to him the next morning, I was like, I didn't know a single record they played.
It was amazing.
What was that all about? He's like, that's house music. And I was like, right. Let's go again. And then I'd go up, I'd get the courage to go up and ask the DJs, where'd you get this? What's this tune? Frankie Knuckles' whistle song, blah, 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 whatever it was. And where'd you get it? 23rd Precinct, right? So I'd be there.
That's a legendary, isn't it? 23rd Precinct.
Spending all my student loan, and then, that was it. I became the guy who had records, and then I bought decks, and it was the guy that had decks, and then I was making mixtapes, and it wasn't a popular, now everybody wants to be a DJ. It's now like whereas back then it was still, there was still a little bit of that, oh, DJ, like, you do weddings and all that? And you're like, no, it's like, I'm a proper DJ. It was like, there was that people thought of a DJ as the guy with the...
who say, hello, 1, 2, 3.
This one goes out to all you lovers out there. All that chat. You know, slow song at the night. Right, grab a partner. So, but obviously it's totally different now. But I saw a different side of it. That's kind of dance music subculture that was just starting. And Glasgow had a big, Glasgow had a really good dance scene back then. So it was great to be, to sort of get into that. And so that's kind of what started my love of it. But what kind of got me fully into it was, so I did engineering at uni. And then in my second year at uni, I also did engineering with languages, so I did a bit of French and Spanish. And so part of my degree was like, they had this scheme called Erasmus at the time. So I did 6 months of my degree in France. Right, I got there, and they were like light years ahead. So I was hanging out with some of the guys.
And the dancing was light years ahead.
No, what we knew. So the stuff that they were studying, the stuff that they knew how to do compared to what I knew how to do. Like, I could hardly build a radio, right? These guys went round to their house, went round to their flat, and I was like, "You got satellite TV? How'd you get that?" He's like, "Oh, I built a decoder. I'll show you the schematic." And I'm like, "Oh my God, this guy's amazing." He's like, "Not only that though, they got wind that we were building these hooky boxes. So they scrambled a signal once a month, and guess what I did? I built a descrambler too." And I was like, so when I got back to Glasgow, I was like, right, okay, I'm going to finish my degree, but there's no way I'm going to be an engineer because the French are just going to absolutely batter us. And I had this idea of being like a perfectionist, and the idea of us me going into a profession where I knew how rubbish I was like, I'm not doing that. So I was like, and I didn't really think about doing music, but one of my mates had done a similar degree, and then he was like, he wanted to go in and do marketing. So there was like a postgraduate course in Glasgow where you could go and learn how to do a bit of marketing. I was like, well, maybe I'll try that. I need to try something else because I'm not going to do the engineering thing. So went into the course, and they were meant to get you a placement at the end of the course, but you could have set up your own business, and I had no plans of setting up my own business. But they taught me how to do a business plan and all that. So by the end of it, they couldn't get me a placement. And I was like, I'm more qualified than any of these. Like, I can't believe it. I was totally gutted I couldn't get a placement. And he's like, right, okay, but so you could start your own business. You got any ideas? I was like, well, I've been making dance music since like second year at uni. I've got a mate that I make tunes with. I could do a record label. I mean, I could put some music out. It's not like be out with the bounds of possibility. He's like, right, well, I've taught you how to make a business plan. Go and make a business plan for it. So I went over the weekend, did the business plan, came back. Like, this is brilliant. We'll be able to get you funding from the Prince's Trust, and you'll be able to go and do that. I was like, okay. And then the government funding for this scheme, you get 70 quid a week for the next 10 weeks. So you'll get paid to see whether it works or not. So I was like, okay, let's give this a go. So yeah, I went down, went to my funding interview. I'd been DJing the night before. I'd left my car on a taxi rank outside the Voodoo Room, which is off Sucky Hall Street. Remember where that is? And I got drunk, so I couldn't take my car back to Fairley. So I was like, I'd stayed at my mate's place, and he'd like a student place in Highland.
Rough.
And I was like, walk up, and I was like, oh my God, it's like 9 o'clock. Oh my God, I've got this thing down in Irvine. Oh no, my car's on the taxi rank. So got to the taxi rank, thank God they hadn't towed my car, got in my car, drove down to Irvine, did the thing, and at the end, so, have you had a Nicola Benedetti?
No.
She's a violinist, world famous violinist.
Oh, maybe.
So her dad was on the panel, and go through the whole spiel and everything. So at the end, he's like, I've just got one question for you. He's like, why didn't you ask for more money? And I was like, thought I'd done something wrong. And I was like, honestly, I just need £2,000 to get this business started. And if you give me 1,000, the bank will give me 1,000. And I wasn't even really thinking that you had more money or that I should have been asking for more money. I just asked for what I needed. And he's like, cool, you can have the money, off you go. And that was it. So next day, I didn't even check. I could have only bought 500 records. I could have started with a small order, but I was just like, I had this plan, so I stuck to it. I was like, bought 2,000 records, and then I tried to sell them all. I was really lucky that I managed to sell them all. But it was just, so there was I made a bunch of, I realized I made a bunch of mistakes doing it, but I just got on and did it, and it worked out.
Worked.
Yeah.
And was that underground? Was that?
No, so I had a label before that called Music Tropique, where I didn't have any idea of having other artists on the label. So this was 1994, so I set up the label with just make music. Me and my friend Andy made at his house in Eaglesham, and he was on my course at uni. And yeah, we sold that, and then we did, over the 2 years, we did like 6 releases. And so the basics was you bought them for £1,000, and then you sold them £2 each for £2,000. So you just kept doubling your money, and you just kept doing that. And then by the end of the 2 years, I'd got a distributor. I'd kind of developed as a label, and by the end of the 2 years, he was like, right, well, you could probably do an album now, but you're going to have to change your label because it's basically just you.
Aye.
And people are going to be like, it's going to be fine, but they'll get a bit bored. Because essentially, I'd had this trick where I came up with different artist names for every release, thinking that we would sound different, but we didn't. We just sounded the same. So people were like, we know it's just you. Even though you've changed the artist name, we know it's you. Like, stop trying to kid us on. So just at that point, I was like, right, so I need some other artists. So there was a guy, Paul Flynn, who recorded his DJQ. So I'd asked him, if I set up a new label, will you do some stuff for me? And I'd met a few people by that point. So yeah, and then started Glasgow Underground at the beginning of 1997. And then I did 2 albums. And I think the album sold 5,000 each, but you made like £4 profit on each album. So there was 20 grand profit there. And we did 2 of them in that year. And I was like, right, okay, now we've got a business.
I know you're doing
Now we're cooking.
Aye.
So I could I'd been doing loads of other things, like anything to make, like DJing, like hustling, basically. I'd done a bit of music journalism. I even did some work for Kensington's Club, old cigarette brand, and, anything, anything.
But obviously, like, because some of we're going to speak of some of the artists that you've worked with now, and like how established you are, and it's amazing. The story is just like it's an amazing wee story that you just came from kind of, and built that up for kind of nothing. Like it's brilliant. It's like a wee movie where the wee guy just kind of selling the records at the back of the. But I remember my big cousin, I was talking about Brian. He was kind of talking about how a lot of it was underground at the time because he brought out the law, didn't they? Like the beats per minute
1996, the Criminal Justice Act. Yeah.
And did that have an effect on? Or was that just more underground kind of rave scene that had an effect?
It was more to stop people having raves. So there was from my understanding, I wasn't really involved. There was a party system in Glasgow called Desert Storm, and then there was one down in Nottingham called DIY, and I DJ'd for them a few times, and it was more like you can't have, even if it was more to stop people having raves on land. And just, I think that was it. The repetitive
kind of legal
beats.
Rave thing,
Yeah, because it could get out of hand. They weren't organised properly. People were taking over. I went, even in Glasgow, people were taking over warehouses. I remember going to one after party after finishing work at the tunnel and going to this party, and it was like there was a lift shaft. There was nothing round the lift shaft, and I was like, there's like 300 people, 300 people on this 5th floor. And the party's gone off, and everyone's like drunk and the rest. And I was like, oh, right, I need to get out of here. This is stressing me out. There's like an open lift shaft there. Like I can't. So, but those are the kind of things that, and I guess they are the kind of things that they wanted to, and rightly so. People should. You want people. People need to be able to party.
Listening to it and listening to like how it sounds like a magical kind of time, right? But it does sound as if it was dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, I listen to people, and obviously they talk about Hangar and the Metro, but obviously what came with that was the drug drugs, dealing and the stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? It brings organised crime and stuff. But beforehand, I think it was pretty magical, like in the way that you were allowed to kind of, I don't know if it was rebelling against your parents, because but a lot of it was that parents didn't like that music. It was like, and obviously
it's the same now. You've got like anything from drill to stuff that winds parents up. You just, like, even me as a music fan who works in the music business, there's stuff that the kids are listening to, and so I'm just like, I don't know how you can listen to that. It's doing my head in, and it's just, but that's because I'm a parent, and like I'm just that, there's still loads of people. There's loads of music that people are into now that are when they're younger, but there's some of it that will still just.
I know you get the thing, and it's obviously like I do like some rap music and stuff like that, and I like some of the, like, I love Tupac and stuff like that. I love a lot of his stuff, but a lot of the lyrics probably weren't great for people growing up. I don't think, and then people say, oh no, it's expressing yourself, and I do believe that. I do believe you're expressing yourself, but you kind of need to watch because a lot of the guys that I knew that were maybe and about crime and stuff like that. That was the kind of music they listened to. It was always that
glamorising gun violence, a lot of misogynistic lyrics, talking really badly about women. You get people sampling it now. We have to be careful where we even have our discussions in the label where Rachel, who's the sort of label coordinator, she's 24, and we had a track that sampled an R&B band called Next, and the song's basically the original song he sampled is just a bit rapey. It's about a guy who's just trying to kind of hit on a woman, and the woman's like not into his advances, but he's doing it anyway. That kind of you couldn't write a song like that now. But so what the artist that we worked with sampled the bit where the woman's rebuffing him. And so I'm like, well, surely he's taking it out of context. He's saying that he's allowed to sample that bit, and we've got clearance from the publishers. They've said it's fine that we can sample that wee bit. He's not sampling the bit where the guy's going, I'm dancing close, I'm coming up to you, and I know you don't want it, but I'm doing it anyway. We're not sampling that bit because that's not cool. And she was like, yeah, but you're bringing attention to that song, and that song's not cool. So we should just be giving it, like you said earlier with some politicians, I don't want to have them on my podcast. I don't want to give them oxygen. So I was like, okay, so then, but that's a discussion that goes on. Do you is that giving that song oxygen?
No.
I don't think people are going to look into it that deeply. So as long as our lyric is fine, I'm okay with it. But my opinion might change in 5 years' time. I might let it go. You know what? I made the wrong call.
No, definitely. I mean, we had a guy on, and listen, he seems really nice. A guy called Mark James Scott. He's I think his DR Shy, which are really good. They're quite good. But he was going to work with P Diddy's label, and I was just like, mate, I think your stuff's great, and I like you as a person, but I can't know I need to ask you about it. You know what I mean? Because it's something that I kind of think he is doing. I believe that he is that person. So I feel really bad because like 6 months ago, you'd have like jumped at chance to go to Bad Boy Records. Do you know what I mean? So it's not really fair on him. But obviously he can't talk about and it's with these things that are kind of coming out in the music scene now, where you're seeing no nice stuff. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of, I remember you speak to people and you elevate people as well, and you put them and then you just drop them. And I don't think that's horrible to see people doing that. I've seen a few guys, and you'll know that yourself, Kevin.
Yeah, it happens a lot. It's really hard. There's something within the British psyche that likes doing that as well. That they love the underdog and build them up, but if they get too big for their boots, then they're quite happy to tear them down. You know, it's definitely a Scottish thing as well. They're like, oh, you know, don't tell him he's great, he'll never get his head out the door. Amount of time I've heard that from, I remember people saying nice things about me in front of my parents, and they're like, oh, you can't be saying that, you'll never get his head. He's like,
I know.
And you're like, why not?
Aye.
That's nice and healthy. It's not. You should be celebrating people if they've done something good. You shouldn't just.
Is that in America? Like, man, pure,
You're celebrating stuff that we wouldn't even think was good.
Over here, we're like, oh, look at him. I know. It's terrible.
I know he'd done the dishes. He wants like a medal.
I know, but that's what I remember. Like, just like when you got into prison and all that, it was the older team. And I know the way that the older guys used to say, listen, you need to keep your attitude, just think of the worst all the time, and anything else is a bonus, right?
Right, okay.
So that's the mindset you become. That's a terrible mindset to have. Like, and you're in there and you just expect the worst all the time, and then something good happens.
But if you're not disappointed though,
that's the thing, and it's probably is.
From a psychological point of view, they probably were right.
Totally.
From a kind of dealing with the situation. It was one thing I was curious about, because I've read a lot of your book and I've watched a lot of your podcasts and listened to a lot of your podcasts, and it is, like you said before, someone said, well, I still don't have a handle on what prison was like. And obviously growing up with violence, it would terrify me to go there, because I'd be like, I would not know, like I said before, would I overreact? And then because I'm overreacting, am I going to be a target? Am I going to be a target because I'm not like, I'd be different from people anyway. And so I was like, is there a drama that's been on the TV that is the closest to it? I was thinking of the Sean Bean one. Have you seen that one?
That was Time.
Yeah.
Time is pretty close.
Right, okay.
I don't know if you watched the one with like Big Hawaii 5-0 and that done when they created and brought the politicians not in. It was called Banged Up.
Oh, I've heard about this, but I wanted to watch it. Yeah.
So that was all. What they basically done was they got guys that had all done prison before and asked them to kind of recreate a prison environment. But obviously, there would have been a lot more violence and stuff. Like they obviously couldn't do that. But the intimidation stuff and all that. So basically, if you go into prison, you don't know somebody. Somebody actually asked me that the other night. I was and they said, "What? See if you just go in and you just like batter somebody like straight away, like somebody annoys you, like And I'm like, you really need to watch, but because you need to be, you need to be calculated, and you need to navigate it in a way that. And I was honestly very lucky to have friends who looked at for me, and maybe knew some people and stuff. So I was very lucky, and I always say I certainly wasn't a hard man at all in the jail, but I was well liked, and a lot of people kind of I got on well with everybody, and I think if you got in with that kind of attitude, don't get me wrong, you can get maybe the one person that just takes a no liking to you, and it can go really
you can't
bad.
Please all the people all the time.
But I think it's a hard one to kind of you need to experience it, but. It's no the new that I was talking about it the other day. The prison deaths have went up, right? See, when I was in prison, you were lucky to get. See if you had like maybe one or two overdoses.
I saw that episode with the lady from Ballina when you were talking about
with Donna.
Yeah.
Aye. No, I just got told the other day there's been in one prison this year there's been 9, man. Yeah. Right? No, it's not verified, but it's a good source. But then I started getting messages after that, people saying, listen, there was 5 in there and there was 6 in that prison. Now, that's astounding that nobody's talking about that, do you know what I mean? Because that's a lot. And it's, the drug trends have changed, right? So the drugs that are going in are nasty, right?
I've heard you talking about like spice and stuff.
And like a tizalam and stuff. And stuff
is that like turbo jellies?
Aye, basically, aye, turbo jellies, exactly. And there's obviously fentanyl and nitazines and that I've not even really hit yet. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of scares me because if
the people get access to too much fentanyl, then there will be even more deaths. Because that's the one thing that's like.
The only thing with fentanyl is you've got the naloxone, right? So see, like with atizalam and stuff, atizalam and they sort of drugs, you can't reverse the effects.
Really, right?
Whereas if it's an opiate, they've got what you call naloxone. Don't get me wrong, I think you need to hell a lot of naloxone to overturn a fentanyl overdose, but it can be done.
Right. Okay.
Whereas when you take it's your nervous system, it's totally different. It's a horrible thing to even think about the way these guys will be dying. Do you know what I mean? It's like no nice. Do you know what I mean?
I know there's certain. So if you take, for example, if you take acid, then it can alter the chemicals within your brain. It's not. It's different from those kind of drugs that open up natural things within your brain. Whether if that's how MDMA affects people and some are. How come it would feel like, I don't know how why are they taking that? Is it just escapism? So and the cheapest escapism you can get?
So I was trying to say this to people, see, like, outside, just say, like, talk about the rave scene and stuff, right? Like, so you're the party scene and stuff, like, people are interested in, like, enhancing that night. So they'll maybe take, like, whatever, cocaine, ecstasy, whatever. Like, when you're in prison, you want to, like, you don't want to decrease, you don't want to enhance it. You want to, so you start, the drug of choice changes to, like, stuff that so benzodiazepines affect your nervous system, and so it takes your fight or flight away,
right?
Which is a bad thing. It feels good at the time because you don't feel nervous or you don't feel fearful,
right? So somebody can be, and you can just be like, yeah, like whatever, mate. They can be like,
see if you flung, like, I've not been in prison for 2020, right? And I've not been in mainstream prison for like 2019, but it was just starting, and it was so when I was in prison, sometimes you would get, like, just say an officer was bringing stuff in, and maybe with 1,000 Valium would go into the hall, right? It would be absolute bedlam, like it would be chaos. But it would only happen now and again, it wasn't something that would happen all the time. I think this is a daily occurrence now.
Right. Okay.
So I can't even imagine, but I can only hear what I'm getting told, and I think it's frightening, and obviously that macho stuff's still there. That doesn't go away. So guys are upping the ante now, because they need to up the ante with the environment. And it's just dead scary, Kevin. It's scary. I can't imagine how hard it must be for the boys in the jail. And I've yet to see somebody that's had addiction and trauma punished out of them. I've yet to see somebody that the only people that change are people that either have enough of it or get a good role model. And there's plenty of guys that are trying really hard. You know what I mean? There's loads of good stuff going on in the prisons, but you can only affect a small amount of people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I went through, it was having a child that was a big life event where I wanted to change. But up until that, from, say, when my brain's fully developed at 25 all the way to 42, I had all those unhealthy behaviours that were just there. And
I know.
And when I would get into situations and, you know, never been addicted to drugs, but certainly been addicted to alcohol at certain times. Sometimes I know I would get the fear at 5 o'clock if I didn't have 2 bottles of red wine in the house at some points in my life. Not now, but there was, before I discovered therapy, that was my way of dealing with a lot of the, you know, I'd got into a really toxic situation with one of the artists that I'd worked with in the music business, and that was the only way I could cope with it. Would be like, I could be fine working, so I'd get up, start work super early, finish work at 5, 6 o'clock, and then straight away I'm like, glass of red wine, and you know, I'd go through that.
Like, Kevin, honestly, that's so rife now, and these are people, like, when you talk about addiction services and stuff like that, honestly, we're only scraping the surface of what's actually happening, and a lot of people, that is a way of life for them. It's just a bottle of wine every night, and that is you're an alcoholic, but you're functioning, so you don't see the problem in it. And it's not till somebody, because it will catch up with you, like, whether health wise or mentally, like you will catch up, and then shame comes into it and all that. Then maybe you start hiding stuff. It's hard, and we've got a culture, as you say, especially in Scotland, got on with it, or like, and that's no.
Also, drinking's normalised. So
totally. And cocaine and all now. Like, I mean, that's so normalised. But no, you're so right. I mean, on you go, Kevin. Not drinking.
No, I had friends who were working higher up in the music business, and I mean, I say higher up, just working at bigger labels, so with bigger budgets and doing similar job to me, but kind of working with more. So like head of A&R for a major publisher, for example, another Scottish guy, and he was, you know, we at the same time had a similar kind of moment, but his was much more serious because his 2 bottles of wine was a bottle of whiskey. So he was doing that every night, and that 2 bottles of wine's not going to kill you as fast as a bottle of whiskey a night is. So he, you know, he got to a point where his doctor's like, your liver's like 4 times the size it's going to be, and it's like, he's like, so I just need to calm it a bit. He's like, no, you need to stop. You need to stop. You can't, like, you need to. It will repair, but you can't do any more. You need to, like, zip.
See, there was a time, I only found this out recently, and I was kind of shocked that, I don't want to say this wrong, and I'm going to say it wrong, but the GPs have signed a contract with the government. Now, the government knew that the drug thing was rising, and the alcoholism and addiction rates were rising, and they let the doctors sign whatever it was, it's some sort of agreement that the GPs don't need to deal with addiction, right? So your GP will send you to an addiction recovery team. They're so overran.
It's like all services, I can imagine. Massively,
Kevin. So the GPs don't actually need to deal with it. And I'm not saying that they're telling, like, you obviously can't tell somebody that's drinking a bottle of whiskey every night, just stop, because you can die with drink, like you can have a seizure and stuff. It's not like if you had a massive hit, you could smoke 2 grams of heroin every night and come off it. It won't kill you. But you'll be in a hell of a state. It won't kill you. Cold turkey with drink and cold turkey with, like, street Valium. Now, the doctors are telling you with street Valium. Now, when you're on street Valium, you don't know what you're doing. You don't have any awareness. You don't know what you're doing. You think you're invisible.
So street Valium's different because it's impure. It's not made by pharmaceutical companies, or is it made by criminals? So it's kind of, it's got other stuff in it that kind of it mimics the effect of Valium. So there's you can have some bad stuff in it that's cheaper than Valium to get hold of for the criminals.
So Valium's basically a label, like for diazepam, right? So it was like Valium, I think, were the first people to
They were the brand name.
They were the brand name, right? So it's basically diazepam. Now, you'll never get, if you buy Valium in the street, you won't get diazepam.
Right. Okay.
You'll be lucky now to get a Tizalam, because there's stuff like I don't know what they're doing, but it's obviously clever scientists that are making stuff. So you've got stuff like Benazolam and Flutazolam and all these things that
derivatives of that.
Aye, that like it, but much stronger. So it's easier access, it's easier to get in and all that. Do you know what I mean? It's just, it makes sense for organised crime to bring that in because it's smaller and it's easier to do. So there's massive problems with that, and but what they're telling, like I was speaking to a woman who was basically saying, like, she'd locked her boy in the room. Now this is a mother that doesn't know anything about drugs, and she's asking me, is that the right amount? Now she was paying nearly triple the amount that she should have been. Now I can't sit and tell her what she should be paying. I'm telling her to commit a crime. Yeah. So she's asking me, that's what they're charging me. She's going to way up to this dodgy close to buy these. Now, this is a doctor that's told her to do this. Right, you need to bring your son down yourself. There's
so you got to manage the addiction level, but so she's having to then go and score drugs from.
Aye.
Right. Okay.
Crazy. And I'm like, so see, if she was to go and grab them and then get caught. Yeah, she's done. Yeah, she's not. You see, when she explains the story.
Do you think they'll do her with an intent to supply as well? Because she's buying with an intent to supply.
I know. Probably. I mean, no, I would be very harsh, but they could, because you're supplying it to your son. So I mean, I've never thought of it that way. So it's even worse. Yeah. So it's quite scary the way they're dealing with things, and the death rates have went up 10%. So again, it's no working, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, but it's a very complex issue. It's not just as easy as putting money into it, and it's like what you say, you need to go back and visit some hard times, and some guys have got trauma that you can't even imagine, do you know what I mean? Like some of the guys that I know, like, and I understand why they're killing their pain, do you know what I mean? Especially in a prison environment. But no,
I thought one of the most interesting things that you talked about was, if, criminals shouldn't be punished, but there has to be some kind of compensation made for crimes. Aye. So how do we handle that? How do we take someone who has committed murder? You can't just say, right, okay, well, you're going to go to hospital and you can just have, and because people are going to say, well, that's just too easy and that's not fair. But so there has to be a different way of treating people, so they're not treated in prisons where you're just going to compound. Like you said, you can't. It's not going to make you able. You're not going to be able to look at the things you've done sensibly, because you have to turn into this kind of robo beast that you're when you're in the prison system. So you can. How can you act, like, as you've said? How can you access your?
It makes you worse. Yeah. Actually, I've seen. I know many a person that's been into prison and come out 10 times worse. Do you know what I mean? And they know this. It's no new. It's like it's amazing. It amazes me the way that they just keep going, and it's like Einstein says, you just keep doing it's the insanity when you just keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different outcome. Do you know what I mean? It's and what you're saying, like, obviously if you commit murder or you commit a crime, and obviously I went through that whole process and stuff, and obviously my case, I'm not going to go into my case and all that, but it's like it's scary, and it's horrible, because there's people there that are hurting. When that kind of crime happens, somebody's, it's horrible. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I read the judgment in your case. So I read a bit about it. Aye. And so I think it's definitely unfair what happened to you, but also something had to happen. So it's a problem with the justice system.
It's hard because if people come to your door and there's a fight breaks out, do you know what I mean? And somebody that, it's horrible. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I could change one thing in the world, it would be that, Kevin. Do you know what I mean? If I could, but I think that, look, you need to move on in your own life. You kind of need to accept a lot of stuff that's hard to accept. Do you know what I mean? But when you go into prison, listen, these things aren't happening in affluent areas, right? They're not happening in, like, your they're happening in the schemes where they've been happening for years, and it's trauma responses. Violence is a trauma response. It's so I think that we do need to punish people, but no the way. Like, you still get prison, and it is changing. It's the landscape's changing a bit, but you do still get prison officers that'll be like, I know, give them bread and water, give them nothing.
Yeah.
If you do that, you're just going to get an animal reaction. Do you know what I mean? Like Johnny Steele, that, like we've had Johnny that on. I don't know how that guy still functions. I mean, the stuff he's been through, like 6 years naked in a cage and all that. Do you know what I mean? Like what are you expecting that person to be like? Do you know what I mean? Like when he comes out of that.
Yeah, if you treat someone like an animal, why are you surprised that they act like an animal?
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a hard one, but it's very interesting, and it's I had Chris Daw on, right? Chris Daw's a big KC in England.
I watched that when he was amazing.
Brilliant, honestly, like spoke so much sense.
I love everything he talked about in terms of what justice means to him. I felt people like him should be
definitely
in charge.
I think
if he was one leading, if he was one saying this is how we're going to handle things, I as a kind of member of the public would be like, that's someone who's speaking a lot of sense. And
that's coming from, and I was very surprised at his answer when I said, are you the only person that thinks that?
Yeah, I saw that.
And he said no, and because I always like, but listen, Scotland up here we're different as well. Yeah. Like there's a boys club up here. Do you know what I mean? It really is a boys club, like that high end kind of judge stuff. But the Crown are obviously they've got a job to the public, and their job's hard. Do you know what I mean? Especially when they've got this kind of the epidemics happening. Do you know what I mean? And
they're underfunded as well.
Of course, and you get there's it's such a complex issue. But Chris Daw, I thought, just broke it down perfectly and said, this is how you do it. Do you know what I mean? And then when he was talking about like the victims, I've always said victims should maybe, because obviously they're hurting.
Yeah.
But the law is supposed to be coming from a stance of no bias at all. Like, you're supposed to be starting from the person's innocent. Let's find them guilty. Yeah. Or let's prove he's innocent. If you're starting with victims, you're not starting for that point. No. You're starting from you prove you're innocent. Do you know what I mean? Which isn't supposed to be the way the legal system works. So I kind of agree now with Chris Daw, because he changed my mind on that. Like when he spoke about that, but certainly it's a hard subject, because when you're that person you're the victim of that. I can't imagine it. I can't imagine how hard that is, and it's so hard to kind of imagine and put yourself in that position of losing somebody like that. Do you know what I mean? Well,
I think you've done an amazing job with, given the situation that happened, you can't go back and change the past. I think you've done an amazing job with the work that you do and what you're doing to sort of, if you can do anything to counteract that, because you can't, as you said, you can't change it. It's happened in the past. But I also think you were 19 when it happened, 19, right? Aye. And the human brain doesn't fully develop until it's 25.
Aye.
And so I still think there's issues there with what happens with, when someone's considered an adult. Because for me, 18 is even still, I was talking to my son about it. It's like, until you're like mid-20s or beyond, if you're making decisions and I think there's something off, like, and I remember being under 25 and I made some,
crazy.
You're always, one of my best friends says you're only two bad decisions away from something that will completely change your life. And I've definitely made some bad decisions and been lucky. And there's other people that made bad decisions, maybe like yourself, that weren't lucky. And it's just, I think, I'm thankful for those things that, for being lucky in that situation.
Definitely, Kevin. It's like, when that happened to me, it was like I wasn't like a career criminal. I wasn't anything. I wasn't an angel, but I wasn't involved. And it's when you go to prison, you see, you get to see the big bad world. Do you know what I mean? Like, you get to see what real stuff's going on. And 9 out of 10 of these boys are through the care system and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? They've been through a hellish time. Yeah. And it's like trying to understand that, but it's trying to get the public to like, if you've seen a wee boy at 5-year-old that was like you're saying, like you were scared of your dad, but it's maybe a wee boy that was sexually abused and all that, and he can't talk about that, right? Because that's a weakness. Do you know what I mean? It's mad, right? So they can't talk about that. It's a weakness. So if you would never tell that 5-year-old or 6-year-old, fuck, like, just you, like, shout,
Get on with it.
I got on with it, and just, you would be
No,
so
I mean, that's
sympathetic. But that same wee boy is the wee boy that's in the jail.
Yeah.
It's just about wondering about it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No, I mean, it's one of the most Scottish things that happened to me during therapy. I was like, I was talking about my upbringing and stuff, and I was like, yeah, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, there's people that have I'm listing all the people that could have had been dealt a worse hand than me, and so I shouldn't be complaining at all because there's all these people that been dealt a worse hand than me, and my therapist was just like, listen,
I know it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that.
Aye.
You had a tough time, and you're dealing with the sort of you're trying to uncover it now. And yes, there might be people that had worse childhoods who might have to go through more to uncover it. But at the end of the day, it's difficult for everyone to unpack that stuff. So don't think that you in some way should be like having to cope with it, because that's not how it works.
No, and I think that is a problem. Is people take that load on because it's shameful, embarrassing, just so much. It's just this. Like, so see, like the music industry, would you say like there is a problem with kind of substances and that, and even in with the kind of DJs and stuff like that? Is it, or is...
I don't know. Like I don't do any drugs myself, so I'm never, and so because of that, I'm not around it. I don't like. I'm not. I know I know that it happens, and I know that
it's like any industry, isn't it?
It's like any industry, but no, I think I don't know if there's. I don't know the main things that I see in the music industry that sort of concern me is that a lot of people are drawn to being an artist or being a producer or why I was, just maybe through you getting validation through people liking what you do. So you're standing playing records and 1,000 people are cheering in a room, then that's great, right? And that makes
addicted to that.
Yeah,
really.
and that's way better than unpacking or having any kind of trying to deal with any when you can focus on those thoughts rather than focusing on the stuff that's dark in there that you don't want to. It's your like I said, music was my kind of escape, my kind of safe space. So and then I'm getting validation from that. So it just, and a lot of people are drawn to that, but it doesn't, and it makes all the dark stuff kind of bearable, and it kind of brings you up from it, but you still get taken back there. So it's not like a fix for it, but it's certainly but then you get a lot of people that are drawn to that who are sort of drawn to that, but they're also they're also got some toxic behaviours themselves because they grew up. I certainly had toxic behaviours because I grew up in a dysfunctional family, and that made some of my behaviour toxic, and I've had to work really hard to iron that out and not exhibit those behaviours. But loads of artists don't, and they don't. And then when they get high,
there's a fine line, like with you, like even like Eminem and people like that, like that have addiction problems, and you see them out. I mean, artists that have got that addiction problem, and it probably is what you're saying. Like, I've never really thought of it that way when you're looking at it and you're getting that exterior validation, huge exterior validation, and it's hiding.
I couldn't please my dad if I didn't do anything. If I turned up 50 metres, I got a punch in the face. Right, okay, what's the best thing I can get? 10,000 people screaming my name. Yeah, that feels better. That's what I deserve. That's what I should have got from my parents. That's what I should have got. I should have got the same love that everyone else got, but I didn't. But I'm getting it here. It can't change what happened before. You have to go through.
I know.
You have to fix that. But it makes
perfect sense why. No, and then that would mean you probably get a lot of artists who are Avicii's story is so sad.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, such a sad story, but that's probably. You'd probably get a lot of people. That's a wee kind of eureka moment there, isn't it? Like when you go like that, that's what explains.
I'm not sure it's everyone. You see people that don't
right.
seem like that. You see a lot of people that don't come to that, but you have artists that are acting that you hear stories of, and there's going to be a lot of it that's that. So if you people you talk about that there's rumours or there's stories about whether it's Puff Daddy or whoever, and you think, well, what drew him to that?
I know.
Was is he one of these people that's coming from, if what's happened is true, is he coming from a place where he can really help that? He needed help before he got to that place.
Definitely like I mean, if only this is totally just me like just having a shot in the dark, but I would probably say the guy's probably been gay and not being able to display that.
Yeah.
And then because of the size of who he was, the only thing I don't like about, I do believe that he's probably been involved in killing Tupac and the other
Really?
boy. Do you know what I mean? That's only my opinion. Do you
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
I don't know enough about the story.
But it's exactly, if you look at his background, he came from a rough. He came from the Bronx. So this kind of stuff. It's very easy to become, if you're in that gang world and that, and then you start coming into the music industry. It's like, look at Suge Knight.
Yeah.
He came into the music industry and kind of just went, well, there's no really gangsters in here. I can take this whole place over. Do you know what I mean? And that's,
people would, like, there's times where I've done it in the 90s where I've had to be like, people would try and like just screw you over and not pay you. So there's been times where I've had to phone somebody and go, listen, you owe me like £5,000. I owe this to somebody who is an artist and they're from the East End of Glasgow, and the way they fix these problems is different. And you might get someone who wants to dangle you off a building until you agree to pay this money, and I don't want to give them your details. And so it'd be much better if you just sent me a check.
And that
next day you get a check. Am I proud of the fact that I've had to have that conversation? No.
Totally,
and would I advise anyone, would I talk to my son and go, yeah, do that, that's a good tactic? No. It's horrible. But like, when you're scrapping, when you like, you sort of resort to those tactics, and it's, you know,
it's only natural that you would go, and especially if you listen, there's no successful businessman out there, that's a successful business person out there that's no got that side where you need to be kind of ruthless when you need to be. Do you know what I mean? And obviously you've grew as a person now, and you've realised that maybe you did do stuff, but you can tell just you're so genuine, Kevin. You can just tell that, but it's the way like you're an open book. Do you know what I mean? Which I think probably a lot of people in the music industry journey, because you're playing a persona, and you're, especially if you've got that big, massive kind of A-list stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Do you know what I mean? You'll have that kind of persona.
There's pressure to be cool, and so to be cool, you have to maintain you can't do certain things that are considered uncool. But there was a lot of time when I was in my 20s and I just wanted to be cool. So I was making dance music to be like accepted, to be like, to do something. And I had quite a snobby attitude to other, and I was using it to feel superior to other people. And I would be like looking down my nose at things that I thought were uncool. And that got me so far. And then even working with, I still had that attitude a bit when I was working with Milo, and a lot of the music business is kind of, that's the currency, being cool. People want to hang out with other people that are cool. They want that social currency. Those are the things that elevate people within a social network that makes them more attractive. And it's, you know, it's part of human nature to want those things, to want to be more attractive to people that you want to have relationships with, whatever. But it wouldn't make me truly happy. And so there was a point when I started again after Milo, that ended really badly. We all fell out.
Did you? Because obviously I was going to talk about that because that album's legendary.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And it's probably a shame then that you've kind of went in that kind of bad way where you've. We
were three similar people. We probably had similar upbringings, really strict, like imposing fathers that had given us like this incredible work ethic, and each one of us was probably liable to want to try and either bully or like be that. And so there's three of us all button heads, and not being nice to each other, toxic relationship. And
it's the successes that were in at that time and all was massive as well.
No, so we went from him.
Camel Fat as well, you know that.
Yeah, I've had some big artists, but he went from him like giving him. I sold a flat in Glasgow that I was living in to get £15,000 to give him an album advance, and that means he could stop working And he went from that. So he earned £15,000 that first year to after we'd made him after we'd had all the success for the record. One gig, I remember he did a corporate gig for T-Mobile. He got 70 grand for an hour's work. And I mean, now the money in the music business is way over that. Something like Fisher will get £250,000 for a DJ gig and stuff. But at the time, you take someone to that level, and when you take someone who's obviously got issues, and then you give them that platform where they're the golden goose, as it were, and if it's like whatever Milo says, Milo gets, and you give somebody who's got like emotional issues, that's not going to end well.
No, it's toxic, and especially if you're like a perfectionist and you're wanting things done like your way, and but you, so then you're thinking I've gave and quite rightly so. You're saying, well, I've gave you this opportunity, and now you're and he'd probably been right in saying, aye, but it's me that's made it. So there's that.
It's all of that. It's like I was going to get it anyway. You just helped me along the way, and now I don't need you anymore. So you should just be like, you should just say, you should be grateful for this time you've had with me. And so I ended up in court because we couldn't agree how to split it up, and in the end we all split it up. And so, but when I started again after that, I just thought, right, okay, I can't do this again where I'm just going to try and be cool. So I'm going to be completely
authentic.
And so people might think some of the stuff I do, like I've sampled ABBA, and some of the people when I sampled ABBA were like, you cheesy so-and-so. And then I'd be like,
I thought it was brilliant.
Right, cool. So I was DJing at a party in the East End of London, and it was all like 20 to 26-year-olds. And it was a kind of disco throwback party, but they didn't want disco or authentic disco because it's a little bit lightweight. They wanted something with a bit of pump still. So I was making these edits. So first party I brought along what I thought was disco. Like this is me. Like at the time I must have been 46, 47, and I'm like, this is what I consider to be disco. And they were like, no. And I was like, okay, so what's disco? ABBA, Donna Summer. I was like, right, okay. So the next time I did an edit of Donna Summer and I did an edit of Gimme Gimme, biggest records on night, absolutely massive. The whole place was just like, that way with a room.
I genuinely didn't know that was you. When I looked it up, I was shocked. I was like, I love that song. See, like the Gimme, I love that. The verse in that's absolutely amazing.
And so I did, and Lee Cabrera, the guy I did it with, we both actually had an idea to do the same sample at the same time, so we ended up collaborating on it. But I remember I did my version, and then I'd sent it to Michael Kilkey, and then he said to me, Follomore's playing your track, and the DJ Follamore had played one at a Fly Open Air in Edinburgh, and then that clip went viral of him playing it in Edinburgh. I was like, that's not my version, but somebody else has had the same idea. So I was like, right, I've got to get this. This is someone's going to do this, and this one's going to go. And then there was a few versions. There's a few people put them out at the same time, and then my version seemed to be the one that was like the one. It's just, when you're doing a version of somebody else's song, there's loads of versions. I did a version of somebody that I used to know, and Fisher's done one, and his has done more than mine because he's Fisher and stuff. But some people still comment on mine going, yeah, this is the best one. And so it's a personal taste. It's like everyone.
It's brilliant, like to even be considered like in that bracket with Fisher and that, because obviously, and this is the thing with DJing, we were talking about a wee bit earlier. Obviously I'm not saying Fisher is, but you're getting people now who aren't the great DJs who are just going up with playlists because they've got an influence, and it's John Mancini was kind of talking about it, and he was saying it's kind of annoying. Like,
it's happened all the way though. People used to go and see Pete Tong, and people used to complain Pete Tong wasn't a great DJ, but he would fill the tunnel because he was Pete Tong from Radio 1. So there's always going to be a bit of that, and there's always people that are going to be brilliant DJs that no one's heard of and that don't get gigs, and that's just. Tell me
Annie Mac's brilliant. I love Annie Mac.
She is good. I've DJed with her.
No, I knew it. I seen that, and that's why I was like, I love Annie Mac.
Because when I was going through my full authenticity thing, so I've done some remixes. I remixed like Tiffany, I Think You're Alone Now and stuff, and even done some. So I even did one of Wham's Last Christmas. I was like, I don't care. I love these songs. People can think that these versions are cheesy. I don't care. Like at the right time, at the right party. So I was DJing with Annie Mac at this same party. And so the guy who'd organised the party had done some favour for Annie Mac. And anyway, this was her returning the favour. So she comes on to DJ after me, and she's not quite ready. And So I'd done this version of How Will I Know by Whitney Houston, and I was like, have I gone too far now? I don't know. And so I was like, and she's like, I was like, I've got one more record, but it's super cheesy. And she's like, oh, no, it's fine, you can go with that. And I was like, honestly, this is like mega cheese. And she's like, it's fine, go. And I played it, and the whole place went mental. And she's like, you need to send me that. So I sent it to her, and she played it all summer, every festival. And yeah, she was brand new. So yeah, I think she's lovely.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's good to hear because, but no, I think it's like you're kind of a lot bigger than what you're like. When I was researching, I was quite shocked with the stuff and the people, and they're very down to earth. But that's I think you don't put yourself out there as in like I'm this big shot kind of guy, and
I don't think it's. I think that's because it's just not. It's not. That's not real though.
I know
because people like. Whenever I'm doing, like, I have this thing when I've got someone who helps me with my social media now, so they come and film me, and I'm like, I want it to be real, and so we filmed me like where I make it in my front room, like at a desk, at a table, like I don't have a big fancy studio, and then we hired a studio and we did some of the posts in the studio, and like it looks so much better, and people reacting to it, and I was like, okay, I've just got to accept that. People want to see me in a studio and they don't care about the authenticity that much. But I'll talk about it and say, you don't need this and you don't need that. Because I think people try and make it like it's not rocket science. I'm not running SpaceX. I'm just making dance music. It's not that difficult. And people try and complicate it and make it more complicated, mainly to sell you stuff. And I think that you can cut through all of that. And I think more people should be cutting through all of that. But I think, like I said before, there's a lot of people coming to it from unhealthy places who want to be elevated. So they want to look down on people and go, you know what, you need my experience and you need my fancy studio and you need all the things I've got. Otherwise, you can't do it as good as me. They need to be able to say that. Whereas I'm like, you don't need that. You just need a good idea, and you can execute it really cheaply. And I've seen records made on Fruity Loops, on a hooky copy of Fruity Loops, on a laptop that they borrowed from somebody and never gave it back. And
it's no like it's. I remember watching it. I watched a program. It was a BBC doc. It was Annie Mac that was doing it,
right?
And I can't even remember who it was, but it was like I think it might have been like who was it again? I can't remember. But it was two DJs for down south. And they were like, it was just when Ibiza had kind of hit.
Right, okay.
And they'd been asked to go and get a private jet. And they thought they were like, I've made it like private jet and all that. He says, and when I got to the airport, it was like the start of the season. He says, look, there was another 2 people there by private jets. And they were like, where are you going? And they were like, Ibiza, like, I've, like, whatever super club have put me on, I've got a private jet. And he's like, so I'm no special. You know, that way. It's like, it's just the money goes up, doesn't it? And then...
There's a lot of people in the industry who need to feel that special stuff, and I just wanted to not be about that. I wanted it to be about like it's just that, like, I love music, I love making people happy, and I want it, like, that's the reason I DJ, because like music's my special place, and also just making people happy. Like, there can't be anything wrong with that as a job, right? That's like and that's
it'd probably be my second dream job, like after a football player, like I think
football.
DJ.
I'd love to have had a shot. I came to football far too late.
I think when you look at Tomorrowland and stuff like that now, and look at the size of the product, they're massive now. It's like you feel sorry for some of the people. I mean, you've been lucky, Kevin, and you've been able to stay in the industry, but you get guys who were really good and who just kind of like didn't at the wrong time. Like,
I think you've got to be open to change as well, and also open to ideas that are like different. So like I said, when I want to do that Gimme Gimme record, because I've seen how there's a bunch of 20-year-olds on the dance floor going absolutely bonkers to it. And I don't care if everyone who's in my age in their mid-40s thinks ABBA's cheesy, because they grew up with ABBA as kind of like mum and dad's music, and this like their mum disco. That brother, no, like that's their reaction to it. And so and I don't want, I'm just interested in what's working now. And so if you have to be constantly open to revisiting your ideas and changing what you think, and yeah, if you're not open to that, then yeah, you'll die.
Got to move. It's fluid, isn't it? It's
Totally.
like you've got to move with the times, and I think maybe people were obviously kind of stuck and maybe never wanted to change, and they maybe thought they'd been authentic, but to be honest, I think if you're in an industry and it's your work, you've got to go away what's kind of working, do you know what I mean, and where because what's the point of it and if you don't know going to be, you can be authentic and still be successful, do you know what I mean? You don't need to be like in there. But what's happening in the new week, Kevin? Obviously you've got some big stuff. I know you're starting out some big stuff, so what's happening in the new for you?
So I mean, I'm just carrying on doing what I'm doing. I've built a label team around me. We've got about 8 staff at the label. We had a viral record at the beginning of the year, where I produced a record that's a crossover between house and reggaeton. One of the first records to do that style. It's now been called Tichengi or Tikengi. It's like an incoming style. And that's now done over 100 million streams globally. We did like a joint venture deal with Warner's. I think in the next couple of months, the records that I've produced should hit over 400 million streams.
Oh, that sounds all right. All right, maybe give me a couple of views in there.
But I mean, but I don't, like you said, I don't really shout about it or walk around like I'm bigger than Prince. And I think for me, that's the way it should be done, because it's like, yeah, anyway, regardless. But that's it. And as a label, we're trying to develop more. We're trying to change the landscape a bit. I sort of did a deep dive into why there's not more female producers. There's a brilliant artist called Ben Jordan who did this YouTube thing, and he went into the whole thing, because people have got all these things that, men have got, it's more right-sided brain stuff and men are better at it, and it's all rubbish. And so the only thing that people can work out why there's more men in the music business is that there's men in charge of the music business because of the patriarchy, and it's always been like that. And then men give men jobs, and then because men see other men DJing, it's an easy in, because they know people that are in that, and so it's just that it's a effect called homophily, where people like the same thing that why there's kind of certain demographics congregate in a certain part of town, like in the south side of Glasgow, certain demographic of people living there, certain parts of North London, certain people from certain ethnic backgrounds all congregating in the same place. So as far as this guy could work out, that was the reason why there was more men in the music business. So just trying to change that, because someone said to me, well, what are you doing about it? And I was like, it's not my job to do anything about it. I'm like, well, if you think it's wrong and you're not part of the solution, that makes you part of the problem. And I was like, when somebody said that to me, I was like, jaw drop moment. Right, okay, I've just had a slap in the face there, and you know what, you're right. Did you have a look at your label, maybe what it is a wee bit like that? Or? No, the label was just, we were reacting to the music that was coming in. And so, but we weren't being active or proactive. We weren't trying to change it, basically, because I didn't feel why is it our job to change it? But when I looked at it more like, I think this is wrong, and so we have to do something to change it because that's the right thing to do, then we looked at changing it. And so we looked at, instead of taking ideas coming from female producers, they might not be as polished sounding or as kind of finished sounding, but we have to listen to the idea and see if there's anything in that idea that we can use our experience. So maybe get them in the studio with me where I can help them realize the record so that it will sound, because they've been disadvantaged. They're not coming to this.
Do you think like females and that have got a wee bit of kind of low self-esteem in the industry, in the way that they feel as if they maybe need to?
I think it's a harder job for them to get into. I don't know if it's to do with self-esteem. I think a lot of people might look at it and go, wow, that's a bit, I'm not going to take on that job because the amount of extra work I'm going to have to go through to get it I'm not up for that as a person. So I'm not sure. I think it's more that, and I think it's just men have got an easier pathway, and so we're trying to do our best to kind of level that playing field. So, No,
when you look at it, I mean, it is obviously huge. Like looking at I'm just trying to think about the new, like, when I grew up, it was like, I loved Tiesto, Paul Van Dyke, Armin
All
van
men,
Buuren.
all white men.
All men, white
Yeah.
white
There you
guy. Carol Cox, like, but he's like really the only one, like, I can think of off the top of my
Unless
head,
of course you're
you know
into
what I mean?
jungle and R&B, so you'd get your Trevor Nelsons, you'd get like you'd have a different demographic, and then Radio 1 would say, oh, we'll have one extra for that. But it's just,
and then even women, like, you look at it, I know, and like Hannah Lang's obviously doing all right, but
Yeah.
Annie Mac.
But before that, from Scotland, if you'd said to me 5 years ago,
There's
like,
nobody in there, no. Like Lisa Lashes was Lisa Littlewood. They weren't even Scottish, were they?
I think Lisa Littlewood was DJing in Glasgow, yeah. So there was, but even if you think of that, I could probably mention 10 other guys that were DJing it. It's easy.
Aye.
So they're hugely outnumbered, and I just think, you know, the more you do to change that perception and give more, like.
And is it because sometimes I'm like, right, if you're better at the job, I don't think gender and that should come into it. But is it just as many good females as there is males, and they're just not getting the chance, or is it just that the job is a job that maybe attracts more males?
No, I think, like I said before, that it's harder for females to get into the industry. So,
Aye.
and men are offered more. There'll be more chance of them having someone within their friendship group that'll be able to give them a leg up. And so it's more about looking at the ideas differently than, you know, is this a finished track that we can send to DJs? Or is this idea good? Can we help them realize this idea? I don't believe in positive discrimination. So we're not sort of putting people places, we're not opening up artist slots and just giving them to women for the sake of it, because that's not, I don't believe in that. But I do believe if you don't try and treat the situation differently, it won't change. So we have to try and do something to change it. So it's like, right, even if it's like, so we had one thing where it was more like, right, let's get some female producers and people who want to make music, who aren't necessarily making music to that level yet, but are really good DJs. So we'll judge them on their DJing and then ask them, right, if you could make a record, if you could sample something, what would you sample? Mm-hmm. And if those ideas were good, then we get them in the studio with me where I can do the nuts and bolts bit of making the record. But they're driving it from, so that's one example of where, and that's not positive discrimination. That's taking someone saying, give us a good idea, and then we can help you sort of run with that good idea.
Aye.
And I think that then allows them a platform where it's still their record, their idea, and then they might have had some help, but loads of male DJs have had help. There's loads of DJs who, I know people that have got their ghost producers contracts that they can't even say. I mean, they've told me in the pub, and if I outed them now, I'd be in big trouble. But like, I know that, and people will hide behind that, and they'll say, "Oh, I make this record," and so this idea that there's some person, you know, and women get trolled about it. You haven't made that, or you're not even pressing the buttons, or look, the equipment's, and it's all just. It's depressing.
It's misinformation and disinformation into it again, like, and it's just the world we live in now. It's just toxic, and but even when you look at, like, take something like Calvin Harris, who has a massive success, right? He's like done obviously the Rihanna, a lot of stuff.
Look, like, one of the top 10 artists in the world. Like, so you can't get that's amazing. He's up there.
No, he's phenomenal. Like he's but when you look at how much he's produced, because a lot of his name doesn't get mentioned in a lot of this the stuff that he does. I don't know how that works, Kevin, but obviously I've looked into that before, and I've seen. You kind of know Calvin Harris's tuned, you know what I mean, the way. And you look up and you'll see he did, like, that's produced the music behind
like
that.
We Found Love. He wrote that song. That's his song. So he's like, you know, he's definitely. Yeah, I remember him right from the very beginning, because his first album, we had an opportunity at Milo's label to work with him, and I just wasn't a fan of that first album, but I'm, you know, totally delighted he's gone on to massive success. It's great seeing Scottish people right up there, and I'm not going to be one of these people that trash talks Calvin Harris. I think it's great. But he started from a very different place, but he just, you know, he's come up with some absolutely incredible songs, and you know, the stuff he's done with Ellie Goulding, he's just had a new one out now, and the one before that. Brilliant, realising that dance music's getting faster and trance is coming back in again, and sort of and having that spin on a pop record, you know, very clever, on point, seeing things happening and sort of reacting to it and having a really big
Aye,
dance
big
record.
influence, aye. No, and I think obviously what you're saying, the trans stuff's coming back, and so Dave Pearce I used to love Dave Pearce, right? I used to buy his when I was in the jail, right? I used to buy his every year it would come out, like Dave Pearce 2004, 2005, and it was always like all the best trance anthems, and that was my kind of era, right? I loved that kind of generation, and my brother used to go to Ibiza all the time, and he used to kind of. It was a shame because he didn't want to tell me how good it was and all that. But I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to go to Ibiza, and like it was. I will go. Do you know what I mean? But I was just when I came out of COVID, it was just. I ended up having a weigh-in dead quick, and it was like,
right, okay.
So we had these plans, me and Fiona, right, we'll go to Ibiza, we'll do this and all that.
There's probably better places to go than Ibiza. If you want that early Ibiza experience, there's probably Croatia or Malta, or there's places where you'll get that
things happening, you know.
Yeah, and it's cool, and you've got like you'll get festivals, and you've got that feeling that you might have had in the late 80s, early 90s in Ibiza, because Ibiza now is like super commercialized. Yeah, you go to Ushuaia, it's like €35 for a vodka and Coke or something. Yeah, why would you go there? It's like,
you don't need. It's a young, I mean, obviously the young people are going to go. It's just a name into Ibiza, and they're just it's that thing with the Calvin Harris and all that.
Yeah. No, I think you can. You've been into dance music for a while, so I think you'd be able to. You could go and get a much richer experience from. Love International Festival or Electric Elephant or any of these festivals that are in that part of Croatia, just over the water from Italy.
Fiona my missus went to, was it Lost and Found?
Yeah.
I think that was maybe Annie Mac's one.
Yeah,
Lost and Found.
That was in Malta.
She actually met Joe Kolzagi at that. She ended up sitting with Joe Kolzagi because it was so funny. I know it's a mental story, right? But her and Arlene.
Is that from boxing? Do you know have any connections from boxing?
I would like Joe. I said to Fiona, I says, obviously tried my luck. I was like, going to send him a message on Facebook and see if he'll come on and put the podcast. He never ever go back to it, but she spent the weekend with him and his partner, and she says they were brilliant. They were a great company.
He comes across like a good lad.
She says he was lovely, and but it was funny the way Arlene. So Fiona obviously had, like you weren't supposed to have a phone in the jail, do you know what I mean? But you did, right? And Fiona phoned and says, do you know a guy called Joe Calzone? And I says, who? He says, Joe Calzone, he's a boxer, I think. I says, Joe Kolzagi? And she went,
that must be it.
She went, and then Ali went, that's him, Joe Kolzagi, that's definitely him. So then the next thing it was like, she's phoning me, she's like, oh, I'm calling him Brosov and all that, right? Like me and him, and I'm like, his missus was there and they were having a great time. And I was like, Fiona, he's like one of the best boxers ever. Like he's like a mate. She just didn't know, but I think she got a better experience with that because she didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a big start to him, and she had obviously it's a good weekend, but that was Lost and
like
Found.
that as well. He must meet so many people that are like, oh, tell me about this, and he'd be like, she'd have just been like not talking about boxing. He must have loved it.
She says to him, I know who Ricky Hatton is, and he went, what? Ricky Hatton, you don't know me? He was gutted. But so obviously we're kind of coming up to the end of the podcast. But so what else is happening? Is there anything you want to kind of promote or like anything that's kind of like happening?
No, I mean, I just like I make loads of records, so I'm always looking for new ideas to kind of make happy dance floors. I put a record out every couple of weeks, and so most of them are kind of big samples or like remixes of things that we're always recreating everything. So they're original recordings. So we've got like singers involved and everything to do it. So we're not sampling old records and just bootlegs basically. So, but yeah, I'm just doing that. Continue just trying to carry on that thing, and my company's getting a bit bigger. So it's just trying to figure out where we take it. I've signed a vocalist called Darcy, who I really love. She's the girl that sang the female bit and somebody that I used to know. And so we're working with her on trying to put together a project. I think she's a brilliant singer, but we just trying to put together a project where we can showcase what she does. And yeah, I'd like to write some more. I'd like to do some more original stuff. I think there's a real lack of really good original dance music. A lot of the reason why I'm sampling old records is just because there's not it doesn't feel like there's a huge amount of people writing great original dance music. So I'd like to try and do my bit to change that.
Aye.
But other than that, I'm just trying to just have fun and put records
I know
out.
it's but
I'm not too deep about it.
Aye, like it's just a joke kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
like, but obviously to us, it's like looking always, like I always say this, to like looking in, you'd be like, oh, what a fucking job, like amazing. But
No, it is amazing.
hard
It
graft
is-
and all,
it-
but like for
it's-
you, it's like,
it's hard work, but like I mean, I think there's a few times where I'm like, oh, this all might go tits up. I might have to get a proper job, and I've been like, what would I do? And I'm just glad it never has, touch wood, so far yet. And
I don't think it will.
well, now
I
from
know,
now
I know,
Spotify's on board. Now people are paying monthly for their music. It means that we're still getting paid for things I did like 10, 15 years ago. It's a bit like having a pension, and the money just keeps getting better. So hopefully,
No,
as long as Donald Trump doesn't get in, and then
I
if
know.
somebody presses some massive nuclear destruct button, that's so. As long as the world keeps rolling, hopefully, fingers crossed. I don't know.
No, I know, and this is the thing with like AI and stuff now into it. I don't know if does that scare you guys in the music industry, the AI stuff?
I think there's a lot of stuff that it's made people be better, because there's so much stuff that can get done by AI, and so that means everybody's doing it. So it's kind of put that level. Any DJ can go right now. They can go and get it. So they can go and get an old acapella. They can feed that acapella into an AI system, and they can say, right, okay, can I get somebody who sounds like Cardi B to sing that? And I've now got an original recording of an AI Cardi B singing this old song, and I can release this as a cover version. Now, people are starting to do that. It's a bit, within the next 5 years, that'll come commonplace. And so you'll then be like, the job will be trying to find people that sound better than AI, and trying to have artists and ideas that are better than AI. And that'll just make it, again, there'll probably be a watershed moment where there'll be a bunch of people in the music. But it happened when CDs like stopped becoming a thing. There was a bit of a watershed, and a bunch of people dropped out of the music business. It's,
It's going to happen. It is just literally being on top of how fast it's moving into it, because the technology is the speed of the technology. I actually watched Elon Musk the other night, and I don't know about the guy. Right? I can't make my mind up about him. But
I'm the same.
He was talking about AI, and he was saying it. He says, like, obviously he put a lot of money into it. It was how he was one of the big people to start it, and he says, I don't actually even know if it was illegal what they've done to me. He says, because I started this in the way that we were started. It was to make things better, to make the world better.
Yeah.
He said, so I put a lot of money into it. He says, and I was a big part of it. He says, and now it's been totally commercialised, and it's been stole for exactly what I said at the start. This isn't what I want.
Yeah.
He says, but I don't even know if it's illegal what they've done to me. He says it's, but he's kind of scared of it. He says it's. I mean, obviously he's running me, and I
think there's things happening now. I've seen somebody's Facebook. Somebody's got one of the people that we work with runs our Facebook ads. They had their account hacked, and the way it got hacked was they said that they no longer had access to the email. Facebook then says, right, you have to record as a video, and the hackers deep faked a video. They used images from him to deep fake a video that said this is me, and I've lost access to my account, and this is my new email address. And on the 6th attempt, Facebook accepted this.
Wow.
But then Facebook are now saying, well, that could never have happened. But it did happen. And so you've got things like that where you think, well, if there's certain systems are not protected enough, so maybe somebody get access to a bank account that they shouldn't get to that's got a lot of money in it, then there could be some. So there are some things happening where you think, the bad people on the planet, that worries me a bit. Not what AI is going to do with the good people on the planet, but what it might what's possible for the bad people on the planet. That is a little bit frightening. But I just have to go. It's like anything, you can't worry about what you can't control. So I have very much of that. That's the way I'd live my life.
And I think my missus says it to me all the time, Sean, you can't take yourself away from global stuff.
Yeah.
Like you look at, and I don't read the news anymore, I don't look at the news, but I'm a day kind of flick through and see things on YouTube and stuff like that, and I like watching the kind of rap podcasts and stuff. I do like watching the kind of old podcasts with like Fat Joe and all that, and 50 Cent and that on it. And you watch this kind of stuff, but when you watch the YouTube, I'm really quite spiritual, so a lot of the stuff that comes up is also kind of spiritual stuff. But you will get the odd one where you'll just see what's happening in the world, and it's dead sad. And I always say to Fiona, like, we went to watch, I don't know if you've seen A Sound of Freedom. Yeah. Like, I just get to that film. I was like, what the fuck's happening, man? Like, what is people doing? Do you know what I mean? Like, what?
But at least you're authentic enough to say that. Whereas there'll be a lot of people our age, your age, my age, we're different ages. I'm not lumping you in with me.
No, you look younger than me.
I'm just lucky with a hair.
But,
so yeah, who would just couldn't even admit that, couldn't admit to that. Aye. You know.
Well, Fiona and I, like, listen, Fiona's, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Fiona, and she's been my rock, but it's she says, Sean, it's too much for me. I don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
And this is why
I'm a bit like that as well.
And I totally get it. Do you know what I mean? But I also think that's how they get away with it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I've got too much empathy. I can't watch that. I feel it's like it's going to affect me too much.
That's what Fiona's like. Fiona's like, and I'm probably like, and then I take it on too much and it does affect me. Do you know what I mean? It's like you end up with kind of, no, it's negative thinking when you shouldn't be. There's nothing you can do about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can only try and highlight it when you can and talk about it. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. But listen, anyway, Kevin, what I'm going to do is, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. It's been brilliant having you.
It's lovely talking about all this stuff, so thank you for having me.
No, it's been great. Yeah. But I'll always give the guest the kind of last wee message, and obviously, coming from your background, it's like maybe somebody out there that's struggling or whatever, do you know what I mean? Just and obviously the success you've made, like, it's just, I'll give you the last message.
So I think the one thing that I always advise like artists, and it's the same with anyone, you can pretend to be someone else and you can be successful pretending to be someone else, but you'll never be happy being someone else. And it's much better being yourself. And even if that means you're going to go through tougher challenges because you've been yourself, you'll come out the other side much happier. And I didn't start really being myself till I was in my 30s, and I wish I'd done it sooner. So if you're struggling, you know, don't worry, be yourself and know that you're loved as yourself.
Aye. Perfect. Thank you. Listen, Kevin McKay, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me,
Cheers.
mate.
Brilliant.
All right,
thank you.
Cheers.
Excellent.